Let's bring Geoff Mosher in. He is part of Mike and Moshe on Thursdays here on
look at you.
97.3. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
All right, Moshe.
Unbelievable.
What is going on? So
hold on.
we got a lot of Eagles
When
news
did you
coming in
guys
today.
get
Let's start
married?
with the Foles stuff at the top here and kind of
October 1st.
Yes, just get your assessment on why they made the decision not to tag Nick Foles.
Well, you guys kind of hit on the surface of it. Usually, in this case, you felt that the Eagles were going to tag Nick Foles because they had a trade partner. You knew that they couldn't keep the $25 million or so on the books, or that even they would have to clear that $25 million to get him on before they could make the trade, which means they'd have to make a rash of moves just to clear that space, right? So the obvious and the thing that hits you in the head was that the market was kind of dry. There were no takers. You've had the Giants kind of commit to their quarterback. You've had the Raiders commit to their quarterback. You've had the Bengals commit to Andy Dalton. So it looked like the market was drying up and there wouldn't be takers. But I also wouldn't discount the kind of the under-discussed and under-reported element of that. The language in this CBA says that you're really not supposed to use the franchise tag to
Trade, right?
only trade a player. Yeah, to only trade a player. It doesn't mean you can't if you can't agree to an extension, but you're not supposed to do it for the sole purpose of trading. And I'm not saying that this is a definite reason, but, you know, Nick Foles could have filed a grievance if the Eagles had tagged him with the intention of trading him to a place that Nick didn't want to okay. So there's that part of it too. But in the end, I just think dry market. And listen, there's a chance that some of these teams, the Bengals, the Raiders, the Dolphins, whatever, there's a chance that they're lying. There's a chance that they're bluffing about their intentions with their quarterbacks because they don't want anybody to know what their true intentions are. But is Howie Roseman in the position to call a $25 million bluff right now? I say no. So in the end, I think he's doing what he has to do, but also you don't want to get into any messy territory there with Nick and the spirit of the rule on the franchise tag.
Well, and Geoff, they essentially couldn't. I mean, they had to know they were going to trade him because if they franchise him, they were going to be over the cap, even if it's for over 5 minutes. They had to have their cap in order by that time, and if they franchise him with no trade,
yeah, you would. And that's what I meant, Mike. Is if they did franchise him, they would have to make a rash of personnel moves between now and the first day of the league year, which is March 11th, I believe it is. So they would have had to make some major moves just to get Nick to be under the cap and them to be cap compliant. And you know they're under the cap now, I believe, because of some restructures and because the $20 million from Nick was off the books and things like that. And they could have probably done a few things, but it sounds like they're a little bit uncertain right now on what's going to happen with Jason Peters and some other players. And it's just hard to all of a sudden make these personnel moves on other players and decisions on other players just to get a guy under the cap unless you absolutely know you're going to trade him, and they didn't.
Geoff, is Nick Foles in a position right now of like almost NBA high lottery, first round playoff limbo in which he's not going to sign, like, you know, he's not as established as Rodgers or Breeze or to sign a big deal as old as he's getting, yet at the same time, when you look at the younger players, like he's not on a rookie deal either. So is there a spot right now that you think would be logical where a team could say we can use Nick Foles for the next 4 or 5 years, or is that just not going to happen and wherever he goes he's still a stopgap?
Well, I mean, it depends on how long the stopgap is. I mean, the Jaguars, I think, is the most likely destination. I think Washington is probably a good wild card, and there's some uncertainty with who they'll be able to get as a quarterback in the draft because of where they pick. I forget where the Jaguars pick. I think they actually have a pretty high pick, but you have no idea if even if you have a high pick, right? You have no idea if you're going to be able to get your guy because other teams could leapfrog you in the draft, as we've seen the last few years. So
sixth, I think they picked sixth or seventh, right?
Right, which, you know, I mean, some of these teams could go to third or fourth just to usurp them or to get on top, like the Giants. You would think might do that for Haskins or something like that, or Murray.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right?
So,
like real quick, the Giants could use Nick Foles. They have a connection with Pat Shurmur, but why would a team who's drafting 1 through 7 or 8 right now take Nick Foles as opposed to a quarterback on their rookie deal that they can build around?
Well, they don't like a quarterback possibly in this draft.
Okay, then wait a year. Nick Foles might make you too good.
But Dave Gettleman, who, the Giants GM, kind of came out and really just pretty much gave away his intentions today when he said, the Kansas City model worked really well. And that model was have the veteran quarterback Alex Smith there for a year and have your young project quarterback sit for a year and learn under it. So to me, that means the Giants are going to stick with Eli Manning. And to me, it means that even Jacksonville, if they have intentions of drafting a quarterback in the top 10 and moving up, would still probably benefit with their great defense that they still do have to have a quarterback like Nick for a year or two before they move on to before they develop their project. This is not considered a great quarterback for pro-ready right now, quarterbacks. I'm sorry, it's not considered a great draft for quarterbacks who are going to step in day one and make an immediate impact. So that's why I say you look at Washington, you look at Jacksonville, and it looks like it makes sense for those places for Nick to go.
Geoff Mosher chiming in on this Nick Foles. He's not going to get tagged by the Eagles. So essentially his time with the Eagles looks like it's going to be done, and he's going to walk, and the Eagles are going to get some sort of compensatory pick. That will be figured out, I guess, once he plays and how much he plays and how well he plays. But do you think, Jeff, that in the end that Howie Roseman and the Eagles played this Foles thing the right way?
I do, and I think it's polarizing, and I understand that there are people on the other side of it. And to me, it's all about, the opportunity was there for the Eagles to try to win another championship, and they knew they had a quarterback in Carson who gets hurt the way he plays, and he did get hurt, and Nick stepped in. And my God, if Alshon Jeffrey doesn't drop that pass, and they have to play the Rams in the NFC Championship game, who they've already beaten twice in the last 2 years. You're looking at a quarterback who could have stepped in and did what he did the year before. I mean, who knows how it's going to play out? But people who say they dropped the ball, they made a mistake, they shouldn't have, then you can't celebrate that the Eagles made it back to the NFC divisional round, because I don't think that they would have done that with Nate Sudfeld or some guy that they plucked off the street in free agency like a Chase Daniel type. I think Nick did exactly what he was brought back to do and give the team a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. And that was worth it, to me, in my opinion. I know people that was worth it to decline the second-round pick from, I believe, Cleveland in order to have that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that in a situation where it's maybe not all things being equal, but the scales look somewhat balanced, you defer to your locker room, right? You defer to your personnel. If there's a guy in that locker room that you don't necessarily have to or need to trade and is beloved like Nick Foles was after winning the damn Super Bowl, you do run risk, I would imagine, Jeff, of upsetting a balance inside.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying like the other players would have been annoyed if the Eagles traded Nick Foles and then kind of came back with some doofus as a backup, and when they're trying to all win Super Bowls, yeah.
Well, I'm saying like they won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles in that ridiculous storyline that they did. You saw how this city is, and this city is a big part of maybe not every single decision, but if you're trading away the guy who just won a Super Bowl for a second-round pick for Cleveland, then I think you're taking a bigger risk than your average trade from a PR and inside the locker room risk. That would be my guesstimate that you're trading away.
I don't think it was a decision made on optics. I think that was a decision made on competition and the best chance to win, knowing that if they let him go, they were probably likely to get a comp pick that should probably be in the third, or if not fourth, definitely, if not third, fourth, and then if you're only getting a second in return, then you're looking at, well, what's the value of one round differential picking in the draft versus the opportunity to compete for a Super Bowl again?
Yeah, but I don't know, man. I think that if a second-round pick from Cleveland's a pretty good deal. This is before we knew who Baker Mayfield was.
Yeah, you could also,
that's what I'm saying. Like that's pretty competitive of a deal to make for a guy who just, as a backup quarterback, just won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say it was like a really easy decision. I mean, I think that pick went to Nick Chubb, right, who had a pretty good rookie year.
Correct,
and
yeah. You could
probably love to have.
You could also
Nick
make the you're right. You would have gotten a second round pick that would have added a player. You could also make some sort of potential argument, guys. No, correct me if you disagree with me, but which you
Yeah, I
typically
disagree.
do. The money that they spent on Foles this year, they could have sprinkled that out for more depth in other positions. They spent a lot of money on a guy who really only played about 6 games.
Correct. They did spend a lot of money on him. And again, if you do spend if you take that $20 million, I think it was, and spend it elsewhere on free agency, now you have, again, hurt your process of what you're trying to do, which is not spend a lot of money on free agency, reward your own players, and then be able to get compensatory picks, which they're probably going to get. They're going to get a bunch next year. I mean, especially if Brandon Graham leaves, and there are some other guys who could leave in free agency. So I don't know that we could say that if they didn't use that $20 million or whatever it was on Nick this year, that would have been used on out of the house free agents. I don't know that to be true.
Well, tomorrow it's Mike and Moshe from 2 to 4. We will break down some possible. You just mentioned Brandon Graham.
Where's the imaging?
Guy,
Don't you have
we'll get some imaging.
sounder?
All right, we'll get some imaging for that.
I'm just saying.
We'll find out some guys who could replace Brandon Graham potentially, and more on Eagles free agency. The combine is underway this weekend, so we'll have plenty more tomorrow. Mike and Moshe, 2 to 4.
Yep.
Geoff Mosher, follow him on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL, and make sure you sign up for his Patreon site, patreon.com. Geoff Mosher for more on the Eagles offseason. All right?
See you guys tomorrow, bud.